Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Are you having a good day?
Yes, so went to the Aikido class I've been trying out and swung a wooden sword around a bit and then
Hmm.
went to coffee with some of the guys there and, well, went to smoothie and bacon and egg pie for me. But that doesn't
Ah,
sound as understandable. But yeah, and good fun at work. Got to make a megawatt of steam, which was quite impressive and noisy. And
mm.
yeah,
Oh, I'm happy. I'm inside. It's cold in this room, but it's still warmer than outside. I'm trudging around in the rain all day on my own, as usually I am on a Saturday.
yeah,
But I'm happy. I'm at the end of my week, sitting here with a coffee, actually a coffee, and enjoying my wind down time,
mm.
which I've decided to dedicate for this stressful endeavor. Ha!
Yeah. We were just discussing before we started recording, and we were saying we should record this about
Mm.
what was it? The world and where we're in it, and how we both look at New Zealand and say, yeah, glad we're here.
Yeah, seems like an ideal dice roll, all things considered.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have some of the rights that other parts of the world enjoy, but also being stuck in the middle of nowhere sort of make that less of an issue.
Mm. Because we've
Like,
got
yeah,
like 5 million people and we produce enough food for 50. I've heard quotes from a couple of different
oh,
directions about that.
yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and we do it with like 1% of our population. We're like the most labor efficient farmers in the world.
Yeah, and on the carbon front too. That was a big part of the protest that or had organised down here when they were bitching about farmers producing, lots of carbon and stuff.
Mm.
We're actually number one in the world for not producing lots of carbon.
Yeah, and
So,
we do have
how much better do you want us to be?
we do have some advantages in that, in the sense of we just put the animals on the field and they eat the grass, and we don't have like feedlots and that, which are much higher carbon. So we've got some natural advantages, but still, there's definitely a hell of a lot of skill involved there, just all over the
Yeah,
process.
it's a tightly run ship. I can tell you that my experience on the farm is that these guys know what they're doing and they have it down to a pretty fine science. And yeah, they use the fertilizer, but that is using fossil fuels, but and tractors and that, and everything. But that shit's expensive. They're going to use it as minimal as possible,
Hmm.
and they have a whole bunch of contracts that are based between the different levels of business interacting that facilitate that. Um, yeah, because for farming, I don't know if people know this or not. It's not like a one company running farming or like lots of farms. It's like six different levels of businesses contracting with each other for most farms.
In the sense of providing
It,
different aspects of the necessary range of services that are needed to run a farm.
yeah, I mean, okay, you have a farm owner, but the farm owner will not always own the cows. Sometimes someone else owns the cows. The farm owner does not always run the day-to-day business of the farm. So they don't always have staff. They're already there. You can have like two levels: someone who's contracting, running the farm, who hires their own staff, which is their own wee business, and they do that day-to-day stuff, and then they contract out for other people to come and do jobs on the farm. Come and do tractor work or silage or baleage and stuff like that. Um, Spreading fur, all this kinds of stuff. Like we've had, I couldn't tell you how many contractors have been in throughout the season to do not small jobs for us over quite a while. We have helicopters come out sometime and dump fertilizer on paddocks we can't drive through. We have trucks come out all the time, tractors. Everyone's being and going. And then the business itself, even if it was an entirely everything done on farm business, like my first job was, um, they still hired some people for the likes of silage and baleage. The process of selling the milk itself is a contract. Like with Fonterra, the big milk company here. They're the monopoly, but there are
I think
other options,
I think
which we're
the
actually going with next year to cut them out because they're cunts.
I think Fonterra is one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah, and they behave that way. They're very monopolistic.
Hmm.
They don't like it. I don't know if I said this either on the podcast, but one of the main competitors that have popped up, you know, to challenge them is literally called Open Country as a point of how annoying Fonterra is. Um, and they're going great. Everyone's switching over to them. We're switching over to a more local, even smaller outfit that's just down the road here, but for next year.
Lots of good competition.
Um, yeah, but we don't. You don't just sell milk to the company. You have a contract with them for the whole year, where they come out and they collect it and they do a whole bunch of tests and set prices and things like that. It's a complicated business, but it's lots of different sub entities running their own little businesses, interacting with each other and making contracts and handshake deals and stuff. Quite interesting.
Hmm. And a lot of it would also continue functioning uh, without the rest of the world, I think, too, because it's the local community
Mm.
of um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Everything's local because when you need something fixed, you need it fixed now,
Hmm.
and that means you call a guy who lives very, very nearby to come and do it, and he gets his parts from someone who manufactures them rather locally as well for the same reason.
Hmm.
You know, the amount of mechanic workshops in small towns that manufacture all sorts of custom parts to fix everything
Oh yeah,
is
and a
quite high,
100-year-old
and they
mill
make
and
good
lathe,
money.
and he just really knows his stuff.
Mm-hmm. And they make good stuff. They hire out a lot of the engineers that are produced out of universities actually go and work in these wee outfits
Hmm.
in the middle of nowhere, and they just service all the farms nearby and custom make things, repair things, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Engineers' wet dream.
Yeah, it's like the thingy broke. Can you fix it or make a new one? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Type
Yep,
away and
that's a
draw
lot of what
stuff
it
in.
is.
Yeah.
They get paid well. It's a good business for them to be in.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture too, New Zealand. We don't have a lot of culture, but a big part of it is like make it work, fix it, ingenuity,
Mm.
do it yourself kind of attitude.
In the urban areas, there is still the uh, fighting to get stuff for free and saying, I deserve more, we need more help with this, and so on. And
Gibbs, Gibbs me dat.
yeah, I hadn't heard that one. Um,
It's great. Sorry, it's a guy I used to watch did crazy t-shirts, and that was one of his favorite ones he loved to wear. And it's a picture of Karl Marx, and it just says "Gibbs me dat" on it,
yeah. I think
which I find entertaining.
it's a strategy at life that works in some circumstances, but if there's issues, it means you're not supporting yourself, and not just in the sense of a disaster, but in the sense of when the economy has a downturn, which always happens sometime. It's like there's cycles. You can't say it's going to go up forever. That's
Strategy.
yeah.
It's an interesting word to use for it.
Well, in the social dynamic sense, like in a game theory sense, I guess you'd say.
Like a
Um,
niche.
yeah, yeah. It's a niche
Yeah.
which works at some times, but is really badly adaptive at others. And because it does work better when it works than the self-sufficient style of stuff that we're preferring, like the farming community in rural areas and bodies. But the people who are standing there with their hand out aren't building the thing for themselves. And if nothing lands in their hands, then they're kind of stuffed and they just shout louder until something does or they go away or whatever. But the guy who's not got his hand out and he's just sitting there making stuff happen, um, when there's handouts happening, the people with their hand out for the handout will get ahead from that. But then the guy who's just steadily sitting there tinkering. It's like the the people I respect who promote various forms of ecologically sensitive lifestyle aren't the ones who are out there shouting. It's the ones who are explicitly not shouting, they're just going to do the thing. It's like, oh yeah, you've been complaining about food security and things the government needs to do. Yeah, you see that food forest I spent the last 10 years growing? Yeah, you want some fruit? I've got too much, I can't eat it. It's like, he
I
didn't
think
say anything, he just did it.
it's worth throwing in there that sort of setting up this two sides of a thing about handout and then do it yourself. There's also the worth noting the specialist option,
True.
which is like people who do their thing and can't take care of themselves, but they do their thing so well that they produce enough value to make money and trade and all that, which I'm all for. I'm not the kind of person who's, you know, everyone should live in a tiny community, do their own little things. But in terms of the handout thing,
Handouts are when you're
I
not
think,
giving value.
yeah, yeah, they're just parasitical.
And there is an argument for
It's
hand up in this terms of, okay, you're kind of stuck, and due to bad luck of your circumstances, things outside your control, or your own bad decisions in the past to a degree, you're stuck. Okay, here's some steps out. Here's a leg up.
that's
Now
where
you
community
climb.
charity, I think, comes in really well.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got that pretty strong
Um,
too in New Zealand, which very thankful for.
yeah, I've had some help from I'm going to blank on the name, Salvation Army in the past, and that was kind of amazing that that was there. Which is funny because we have this big social safety net in our country, but it's such a pain in the ass to use. It's just they make it incredibly difficult for you to get anything on purpose, um, which kind of defeats the point of having a social safety net. Like I'm not a big fan of social safety net, to be clear, but if you're gonna have one, don't make it obscenely difficult for anyone to get help.
Mm,
Like when we had trouble, I knew going to them was a waste of time because it would take weeks to do anything. So I went to um, Salvation Army, and they helped us like within 10, 15 minutes. We just sat down, we had a conversation with them, and they're like, right, I understand. We'll help you through the next few weeks, whatever. And then, we got back on our feet and got out.
mm.
It was great. Um, I think that's the efficiency of small charities not run by a bureaucracy. Yeah, I'm way off the track. I think it's the handout thing is a niche. I think that's the best way of describing it. It's like you create a space, a vacuum, and something will fill it.
Mm.
And I think that's the case with the handouts and why it only occurs in big urban centres. You don't get that in small towns and places like this because people don't tolerate it effectively. No one's just going to help that person down the street who's a useless person.
They might
You
offer
know,
them a job.
someone's if someone's exactly. That's the kind of charity that's here. It's like, look, I'll give you a chance. And my boss has actually been burnt several times by doing that with people, but he still did that with me. It'll give you a chance, you know, but the chance isn't, free anything. It's an opportunity to do something, to get some value, to take care of yourself. The hand up rather than the handout, as you were
Mm.
describing. And I think it exists because we allow it. And I think moreover it exists because it's encouraged.
Mm.
People get away with it, they know they can get away with it, and they know for some reason it's encouraged for them to get away with it.
Mm.
So why not? And there isn't this culture of, don't be a lazy bum. Like if you had a society that was all about productivity and hard work, and people who took the handouts were looked down on and shunned, and it wasn't okay, but they were there for when you needed them, I
Mm.
think that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, like I'm in a useful to talk about situation now, of course. So I'm on the sole parent benefit because I'm a
Mm.
solo parent. I can't work a full-time job. Like that's not a possibility. Um, I'm in a good situation, so if it went away, I could still manage. But it's really good to have the net of if everything or if this half of stuff went to hell, if the startup I'm working with failed, then okay, I'd still be okay. And if the government had a radical change because certain political parties got a solid hand on power and I lost the sole parent benefit, then I'd be able to manage on the other side.
It would
And
never happen.
yeah,
Not here.
I'm
It's
pessimist
an
and
interesting
warrior.
one, that one.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, that sounds optimistic in my ears. It's a difficult one. I'm really of two minds because thinking about you in the situation you're in, the benefit there is of value.
Hmm. But it's to
But
give my son a good start. It's not for me. It's to not
I
have
get
a
that.
dependent in the future.
I get that.
Hmm.
The concern I always have for the single parent benefit is the incentive it places on divorce for married couples. And it's the same with the child settlement stuff and the division of assets. It's so heavily weighed in favor of women to the point where it is 100% their best economic choice to divorce. Always. And it's difficult for me to come up with a solution for that. Sort of reason through a back and forth.
It's
And I don't have an answer.
one of those cases where here is a pattern that is negative, but we can't even sort of precisely pin down the problem that we're trying to solve. It's like, okay, we don't like this pattern.
Mm,
What is the cause of this pattern? What is the area to change to improve this pattern
yeah.
of single parent households? And it's like,
Like I have a solution,
yeah,
but it entails human suffering. So it's like a really it's one of those situations where a hard choice is the only option. Like every single way is bad, and one of them is still bad but less bad than the others. But if you're the person who makes that choice, particularly because it's the one that would have you marred more, it's all well and good to say like, well, we care about single parents, so we're going to give them money, and that's you know an easy case to make in a democracy. No one's going to call you the bad guy. Doesn't matter about the you know effects of that over time. It's not an easy one.
I feel like something like subsidized wages would be a good one. So it's like there's the handout side, but then it's like saying, okay, if you work the time your child is in childcare, you can't make enough to keep the house warm enough in the winter to keep him out of the GP and the hospital from asthma and so on. Right? You need to be able to have enough to keep things steady. I'm not talking rich, I'm talking like basic comfort. Um,
Just
and
because you give someone money doesn't mean they do that.
that's very true as well.
My house was cold, and I was often going to the doctor for being sick and had asthma as a kid.
Mm,
She had money from the government, she had the benefit,
mm,
and she worked. So just throwing money at a problem isn't the solution. It never
definitely.
is.
A lot of these issues are so much easier to handle when you have a strong, cohesive community to,
Ah,
yeah, like
yes.
humans work best in groups. We are social creatures in such a deep
Oh,
sense
that's such a dangerous statement in our world, isn't it?
that humans need humans, that people need other people.
Oh, no, people work best in groups. For the modern age of putting everyone in a group and defining them, and that's that group. They really don't like it when people say, maybe Group A should be with Group A and Group B should be with Group B. It's it's kind of hilarious. Actually, that kind of makes me think maybe it's a bit of a subconscious rebellion going on there, the whole identity politics thing. Because we've been shouting and shouting about multiculturalism and integration and how we're all so good together and diversity is great. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everyone's like, no, but my group's really important. Value in my difference. That
Hmm.
seems a little bit like subconscious rebellion,
Hmm. I feel like
don't you think?
hmm, my
Like,
mind went in a little bit of a different direction with it, but
you were thinking small scale, weren't you?
no, I was thinking about diversity and the like saying that the current form of diversity. So this is what will get us cancelled off YouTube. So if you're listening, go to Rumble. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost as though the thought is if we take all the differences and all the variations, I'm not saying this is the practice, but the thought seems to be mix everything together in one big melting pot and everything will be better. But it's like, okay, take all your colours and put them in one pot and mix them together and then paint a painting. It doesn't work.
Yeah, ugly.
Yeah, but if you have a relatively homogeneous culture, then you have the people who specialize themselves into different areas. And with that, you
Mm-hmm.
can paint a picture of a functioning society. Add in some new
Yeah.
colors that are dramatically different, like different foods from different cultures or different ways of doing things that then, now we can do this bit much better by taking that strength. Like
Mm-hmm.
pajama and shampoo are Hindu words, if I remember correctly. Like anyone who complains about
We have
cultural
a lot of
appropriation,
we
take
have a
off
lot of
your.
French words.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't be able to pick them as much, but definitely there's been a hell of a lot of cross pollination. Like
Mm.
a hybrid is, in terms of plants, is often stronger than uh, the pure breeds of either. And you see the same with dog breeds and such, that you get a pure breed with all sorts of health problems, and you get a mutt that's just strong and carries on.
Well, you
Um,
sort of that metaphor sort of opposes what you said before.
about the mix,
Yeah.
I guess the mutts that get the bad combination die because they get it
Yeah.
worse. So,
But I think okay, seeing as we're sort of beating around the bush, I might as well say it explicitly. Um, See if YouTube bans us. As far as I'm concerned, if you want a society that is successful, prosperous, and lasts a long time, it needs to be homogenous. And as much as it'll rustle everyone's jimmies, it needs to be homogenous on the basis of race or nationality, if that makes you more comfortable.
I think identity, like there needs to be a shared identity. Nation is the best phrase for it, I think.
Yeah, nationality is probably the best
Hmm.
one. I think you might have a point that America has for a very long time managed to get away with that, although it's really falling apart right now. And a lot of that is to do with the immigration issue. So, yeah,
Hmm. Where
part of it, and obviously this does not apply to one group over another, which is where the racism angle comes in. Um, when you have a homogenous society where things like, moral action are valued and truth is valued, people trust each other. You can trust strangers more
hmm.
because you know that the stranger holds your values. And that's why society succeeded forever. Is that you come across any stranger on the street, they hold your values. This is why nations used to enforce values on people who immigrated there.
I feel like we need to define what we mean by homogeneous in this context, because there's a couple of different ways it could be taken.
Mm.
We're not saying homogeneous as in everyone marches down the street in lockstep in the same clothes. Like,
No. Is it
Homogeneous.
homogeneous or homogeneous?
I'm not sure.
Because I always heard homogeneous, but I could be wrong.
That could well be one of the words I've been pronouncing weirdly my whole life from learning to pronounce it by reading it and being dyslexic.
You read a
Um,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so whichever it is, um, the homogeneousness is the sort of the worldview, the not quite ideology, but not far off. The you
I'd say
meet
it's
anyone,
cultural identity.
yeah, you meet someone on the street and you can know that they hold a certain base set of assumptions about the world. Like this thing is bad,
Mm.
this thing is good.
You
Not
can
so sure about
simplify it for them.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, this person is like me in the ways that matter,
Mm.
and our differences,
Are
while
interesting, but
present,
yeah.
are interesting and not dangerous.
Mm.
You know,
Like a
I
second
mean,
generation immigrant who likes some interesting foods. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And you understand that there's the
yeah.
or the new immigrant in a who's not part of that social group who's
Oh,
then it's
you
like,
know
oh,
what's
I love this
insane?
country. Yeah.
You know what is really, really insane? Is that not only A, do we have to clarify that, but B, we have to explain to people that once upon a time in a nation, people didn't feel like they were in separate warring tribes. Once upon a time, if you disagreed politically, that was just fine and normal because we're all on the same team.
Mm.
Even immigrants who came to nations, they were assimilated. You know, you came to New Zealand, you became a New Zealander.
Mm.
You leave all your old shit behind. We don't really care what color you are, like America used to be. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what race you are, but you're going to be a damn American, or you can get out. That was
Mm.
the philosophy. You learn the culture, you become part of the culture, and you're all on the same team. The nation was valued, patriotism, I
Mm.
suppose.
And there'd be a strong element of like within a family, brothers will beat each other up, but then as soon as someone else comes along that threatens any one of them, they all gang up on that one. It's like we'll fight amongst ourselves about the things that we fight about, but then if
Yeah,
a
but
bigger issue comes up, everyone lines up to do their bit.
I feel like somewhat of a good analogy, but even to the point is that people didn't used to fight politically. No,
Hmm.
nothing like we have now.
Not
It
fighting in
was
that sense, no.
no,
Yeah.
it was civil.
Yes. It was, I disagree most heartily with your presumption that such and such and such,
Yes,
rather than, oh, you monster, evil, evil, evil. It's
yeah,
like,
and people would be open about their political affiliations. You know,
yes.
you'd be at a pub and people would say what their affiliations were, and people would say, "Well, I'm not that, but I'm this," and they'd have
Mm,
a good old yarn about it over alcohol and not get in a fight.
mm.
But
And
now
they
you
could see
walk
where
down the
each other were
street with
coming
someone
from.
who's completely sober and you say, you know, your thoughts and get attacked.
I
Now,
heard of
obviously,
someone
we don't
getting
have that
beaten
so
up for
much
buying
here, but
Bud Light. It's like to mix the alcohol and the other thing happens.
oh, oh, um, yeah, yeah. There's some communities that don't put up with it, and I kind of admire that a little bit. But at this point, I feel that's reactionary to
Mm,
the other side already behaving that way.
yes, yes.
We live in such a complex society. All the stuff that we've listed so far, it's like going back to the single parent benefit thing. That wouldn't be an issue that needs to be solved if we had a solid culture.
Mm,
We shouldn't need to be solving these problems with law. If they become a problem that needs to be debated and solved with law, when it should really be solved with culture, we've already failed.
mm,
We don't need to be having a debate about, oh, do we need to be giving money to single parents? It's like, no, we need a culture that values stable families.
In lieu of
That's
that,
the
giving
issue.
money to single parents is
Yeah.
it.
Instead, we debate
Yeah.
about abortion and parental rights, where it's like you're missing the point here. The point is like how a culture deals with sex and family and stability.
Mm. And
You know,
the like sex has been so devalued these days. Like
mm.
it's
It's stripping of an identity.
yeah.
You
It's
know, a
treated as
young
though it's
woman,
just an
they're like, oh,
act.
yeah, you're not. Being a woman isn't a defining part of your life. You're just a person. It's a stripping of identity, not a
Hmm.
freeing. You know, you're not a man. You're just a human.
Hmm. And a lot of it's
That
a reaction, the pendulum swinging in the opposite direction in response to the former sexual restrictions of the Victorian era, which, when you see them in the cultural and medical context of the time, actually make a hell of a lot more sense. That having a child out of wedlock was catastrophic in many ways, and when you don't have good medical treatments for sexually transmitted diseases, it's like, yeah, don't do this thing that we know you really want to do because it
mm,
really could screw you and your children over for the rest of your lives. It's like this is
I
a
don't.
in that context, I think it was
I don't think it's a natural
adapted.
swing.
Mm,
I don't think it's a natural swing. I think there was a natural swing,
yes,
and then I think it was pushed further by um, negative actors.
that
I
makes
was going to say
sense.
the M word for evil, but I forgot what it was.
Malicious.
Yes, thank you. Which I ranted about extensively on the last show. God, I wonder if that's going to get us in trouble with YouTube now. I mean, we're so small, no one's here to report us yet, but that was a rant and a half, and it's like all the things you're not allowed to say. Just. Hmm.
Yeah, but like I feel like because it's said so little or it's spoken about so differently, it's worth just thinking about what the value of sexual intimacy is because or like let's steelman might be the wrong phrase for this, but let's see how much of the value of it we can lay out that it's
A traditional family relationship.
yeah, and for individuals and for society as a whole, like how
Oh,
valuable is this?
I I think it might be the most valuable thing in society. Maybe I guess you could argue with with trust, social trust in interactions with strangers. That like the presumption that what a stranger says to you is true.
Hmm.
But I don't I can't make the link, but I have a feeling that that comes stems from stable families somehow. Like I think it is the most fundamental basis of an entire society is a family structure.
Because fundamentally it's a biological act in many ways. Like the
Yeah.
if you trace it back to brain structures it activates or the evolutionary history, like of social primates. Like, how do I phrase this to explore the concept right? It's so fundamental that it is not consciously controllable. It ends up controlling the consciousness. That
Mm.
the desire to have an intimate partner with whom you can face life's ups and downs, where you're coming together to renew that bond, is in some senses a large motivating factor. So I don't think it's reasonable to say that the way it all works is the best way it could, but I think that it is a immensely functional structure because if it was not functional, it would not survive evolutionarily. That the social cohesion of individuals to each other, so husband and wife come together, or man and woman, to sort of move out of the social construct space even more, come together to bond and have children. And then there is a cultural structure around that that is, in many ways, just as evolutionarily derived. Sorry to the creationists, but go away. Um,
Hmm.
but the cultural structure around the biological impulses is just as evolved as the biological impulses themselves. It just evolves more quickly and it can more quickly adapt to changes. But if the changes are too rapid, the cultural structure can still be badly adapted. It takes a few
I think
generations of
that's
steady conditions to settle down. I'm not sure if that
I think
made any
that's an
sense.
unbelievably profound statement. Because you
Mm.
just laid out that human beings have a biology that evolves over time,
Mm.
but we developed culture, and culture evolves faster than biology and changes.
Mm.
Right. But okay, this makes me think of a line that I got from Mr. Jones, which I thought was amazing. I'm sure I described that. That was the journalist in communist Russia movie.
Ah, yes.
He comes across a lady waiting in some kind of line, I think. I don't remember why. And he asked her what happened, like what's happened here. And she says they tried to replace the natural rules with their own.
Mm.
And I think that's it. We have a nature, but we developed culture to protect us from our environment.
And to learn.
Traditions that established rules that protected us from things, and then we changed that as societies evolved and got more complex and had all these systems to protect us.
Mm.
But we are still animals, and we still have biological nature, and that doesn't evolve as fast. And we're at the point now where culture is trying to evolve in a way, I think by force, but that's irrelevant, in a way that is against biology.
Mm.
And I think this must happen all the time throughout history. And I think this is exactly what happened in the communist states, is that certain people decided they wanted to evolve the culture in their own way and remake man in their image,
Mm.
hence the blank slate theory propping up. They pushed it that way. But if it doesn't line up with biological nature, it is destined for collapse and failure.
And when we're talking about biological nature, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see it as, or correct me if this isn't how you're seeing it. Um, it's almost just the way the immutable facts of life are, rather than referring specifically to the nature of our deep impulses towards sex or violence or whatever. It's here are the immutable facts of the way things are, and if the way that you are trying to act is in opposition to that, you're rolling your stone up the hill and it'll roll down again. And it doesn't matter how much you shout at it to roll up the hill, it will roll down. And
All over you.
yes, yes, the more you push it up, the more likely you are to get squished by it.
Or it's the Tower of Babel story, isn't it?
I feel like that's a
Reaching beyond.
yeah.
Yeah.
That hang on, that one's a deep one. Because that's come up
That's
in
why it's right at the start.
yeah, it's the now let's
Building a structure that usurps the
trying to
highest
yeah
nature and
tr-
ideal.
trying to usurp the fundamental nature of reality with your own rules.
Artificial creation.
Yes, leading
and it's just
to an inability to understand each other because
and a fracturing and collapse of said structure.
mm, and if we take that structure as a metaphorical ivory tower intellectual type structure, then you
Hmm.
end up with the fracturing of the intelligentsia that we're seeing at the moment. And
The society is large.
yes, and those who are trying to supplant the way reality is with their own expectations end up speaking a different language. And like
Mm.
we're redefining words, we in the larger sense of society are redefining the meanings of words. What is a woman? What does it
Well,
mean
some
to
people are,
have a child? Some people are, and
yeah,
the
and I
circular
think that's
firing
that
squad
point about.
starts.
Well, I think that's the other part is that there's a small group of people. Small. It's separating. There are two languages spoken now.
Mm,
English is splitting. If words mean different things in different places, then you're not speaking the same language anymore.
mm.
And then over time, the dialects in those different places will change the pronunciation of the words to the point where they become different words. I think it all comes back. I think what we've touched on here by accident is the. Mm, it is my view that society, that civilization, is an emergent phenomenon out of our nature, and that man has a nature. And I believe a lot of the problems in the world come from those who tell themselves that man does not have a nature, that we are a blank slate that can be written upon anything. And from that theory, society becomes social construct, something imposed upon people. And if the society influences the person, then society can be remade to remake the people. And if that's the case, then you could remake the world in your image.
Oh, the
And
arrogance.
that's where the dangerous becomes.
Mm. Because the world does not listen to your pronouncements. The world
Yeah.
does what it does,
Well,
and then, yeah, the
because we
unexpected
have
can
a
happen.
nature. You can't. It's also very dangerous.
Mm. And the
I
ability
remember.
to work this out is, I think, the ability to meet and discuss and think. And the link between talking and thinking is fundamental to human nature. And like shout out to Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying. I've got their book Hunter Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, and they go through a lot of this
It's on my
in
list.
detail in it. You can borrow my copy next time that's
Mm.
possible.
I don't want to borrow it. I want to buy it. You know
Okay.
me.
But he's the one who talked about culture being evolved, and they talk about it as being evolved in that book, but they describe humanity's niche as being niche switching. So humanity doesn't have, as a species, doesn't have a place in the ecosystem the way so many other species do, that we either fill or don't, and then we go extinct or don't live in that area. Um, our niche is niche switching. We go to a new space and then we work out how to live in it. And
Mm.
that that's where culture comes in, that we our bodies can't adapt fast enough for that, but we've developed the potential for culture, and we come out of the womb as we are not blank slates, as you point out, but we are blanker than any other animal. And
Yes.
so we have that adaptive capacity to adapt our culture quickly, where culture is what is passed on from one generation to the next.
I will put a note. As long as the rules of whatever a culture that we establish does not conflict with the rules of our nature, things will go well.
I feel like it's more complicated than that because we can be in
Well,
harmony with our own nature and then disaster strikes.
okay, yes, but they're the outside world. But without the environment crashing on us,
Hmm. I
if you
think,
set up a society in which the rules of the society do not conflict with the rules of human nature itself, then I don't think that society is going to eat itself
hmm,
and collapse in some spectacular way.
yeah. Going against our own
So I think that's
nature
the point.
makes things go
Yeah,
bad. And there are
yeah,
some
we have a
times,
nature and we can't go against it. I know I'm repeating that, but I
hmm,
think it's unbelievably important for modern humans to realize and remember that.
though there are other aspects where hmm, we do learn to control our impulses and discipline ourselves. So there's a place for
Mm,
commanding. No, that's the wrong way to take it. There's a place for,
regulating.
yes, yes, I like that, for regulating our nature, but we cannot oppose it. Like the Victorian attitude towards sexuality example, that was a costly attempt to regulate a core part of the human psyche, the desire to have sex, and it was regulated to a high degree by social norms and taboos and conventions because the cost of not regulating it was worse and particularly
Yeah,
bad in that
syphilis had just
society.
rocked up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it just came back up on the from the ships from America, and that was rocking that society like nothing else. Very bad.
yeah. So anytime you go against our nature, there will be a cost. And sometimes that
Mm.
cost is worth paying. And
Mm,
sometimes, well, in the sense of,
no, I wanna add some more complexity there too,
yeah,
because I use the word regulation because I think it is bounding an instinct, bounding some of the natural rules, but not reversing them or eliminating them.
hmm,
Channeling
yeah,
almost.
yeah. You can do the thing, but only in this way, type thing. You can be
Yes,
violent, but
yes,
only in the
you
military.
exactly. You have these instincts, you have these natural
Hmm,
states, these natural rules, and we're going to put some limits on them here and
hmm,
there, trim off wee branches or shape things in a little way or another way. But you can't invert
hmm.
a instinct, or you
Yes,
can't subvert it and cut it out entirely. That's where things go wrong.
yes,
That's why I use that, and yeah, yeah.
yeah. And by nature, women who are the ones who can bear children in the vast majority of cases. Edge cases can be treated separately, right? You have general categories and then you have edge cases.
Oh my god, I hate this world that you have to make those statements. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. But because they are the ones who give birth to the children, have the ability to feed them for the first few months to a year of their life, where the man cannot. But what he can do is stand guard, protect, provide for. He can bring the food to the mother and child. He can go out and hunt. He can do those things. So each gender, each sex in our species, of which there are two,
Yeah,
um,
sex. Good boy.
yeah, they specialize, not utterly. Like human sexual dimorphism is not that great when you compare us with the rest of the animal kingdom. We're not utterly specialized
Mm,
into certain roles. Women
yes,
can
we are.
hunt, but men, on average, can hunt better because we can throw further, we can do things like that. Not to an enormous degree, but say 10%, right? If you're throwing a spear, 10% might be the difference between catching the antelope and losing it, right? It's like there are differences, and to say that there is no difference is an insult to both. I would make a terrible breastfeeder,
Mm,
but I applaud the value and essentialness of breastfeeding mothers. Not all mothers can breastfeed because of circumstances or medical issues or whatever, right? Yes, life's complicated. We deal with it, but there's still generalities. And there's still this works better. And sometimes you can't do it. But yeah.
I think that's a really important point. It's something I got into with my grandmother once. It was a very interesting argument. Um, I think that no one has done more to denigrate women than feminists in the modern age. Back in the day, it was a different story. Mm, mixed. I guess it depends on the person. But
Hmm.
being a woman is something to be proud of. It is not
Yes.
lesser. It is not, subject or slave. It is something that you want to be proud of, part of your identity. That's valuable. Impersonating a man in a pathetic attempt is not giving justice. I don't know if it's always the Rogan joke that comes back to my mind. Whereas there's something about I probably said this before. He makes a comment about pro wrestlers being really gay, and everyone in the audience gets upset. And then he looks at them and said, "I didn't say that was bad. That was you." And I see that with the women issue. All these people being like, "Wow, traditional women are great," and then everyone getting mad. And it's like, hold on, I thought you were pro woman.
Yeah.
Guess not.
One of the points that in terms of the way both men and women are treated these days, like by the trans activist community in particular, that Jordan Peterson made a point that the men cannot uh, socially discipline. I'm these words feel not quite right, but men cannot bring errant woman into line. It's like there's a
Mm.
I'm not.
Not anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Once they
There was a
go
time
way out,
when
oh, it's
there was a time when that was the case.
yeah,
And
I
I'm
guess,
not
yeah.
saying that was good, but I think it's worth acknowledging that this
Hmm.
kind of thing did not happen then.
Acknowledging that something existed or occurs is not the same as supporting it, but
Yes.
you need to acknowledge the existence and occurrence of things. You can't just pretend that
Mm.
what you wish
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
happen at all.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
men regulated men, which is not something that happens anymore, and regulated women too.
Hmm.
And yeah,
But
positives and negatives on that front.
then we've got the there was a female. I'm not sure what category to put her in. A woman who came to New Zealand to talk about women's rights and against the trans issues. Like,
Oh, yeah, I saw
yeah,
a clip of that.
yeah. And
Boy.
she had security, and the security commented afterwards that she was lucky to get out with her life because
Mm.
was a crowd of people shouting with audibly male voices.
Did you see the clip from her perspective?
Um, I saw something. It was Yeah, I think it was from her phone. The security guard
Yeah.
was sort of hanging on to her, and she was surrounded by security guards on all sides while men were screaming at her. And it's like, while in the while at this time, men can't bring uh, antisocial women back into positive interaction with the society. I think men have the If it's men, it's the men's playing field to 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 bring them back
I don't
into
think we're allowed
positive
to do that
interaction.
anymore either. I think this is the big problem in the West is that the state has
I see what you
usurped
mean.
the right of cultural discipline.
Mm,
Once upon a time in Western societies, it wasn't the state controlling things, it was the men. That was the case. Like, there's no denying that. We could have the more detailed conversation about how women were actually at the table in those days
mm,
and had a lot more power than said feminists will ever like to admit. But back, there
mm.
was actually some really positives for women then, and they were a lot happier than they are now
And saying
as
that
well.
men were in control does not mean that men were the ones with the domination and the power. That it only looks that way to people whose only concept of a interaction is a power-based one.
Oh,
It's like,
no. It only
hmm?
looks that way if you think women are passive and stupid and don't do anything.
Oh God.
No,
uh,
it's true. It's
yes,
true, isn't it?
the image of my
You
ex
have
came
this
to
image of
mind.
history of the dominating man, and the assumption is that women sat in the corner and did nothing. That's the assumption.
Who's assuming this?
The feminists who paint history as men dominating women,
Yeah, because it's like how many.
because that's not the case. Men ran the society in day to day. They had wives to go home to every day. You can bet your ass they weren't just silent in the corner, and they weren't. Queens in particular had a lot of power. Women did a lot of the home day to day work, and because of that, had a lot of power.
Oh
It
God,
was not a one dominate the other scenario.
any man
And
in a
women had their input.
any
They were
man
advisors.
in a long-term relationship with a woman. Okay, you think of
Yeah,
if you do something that she strongly disagrees with, will you hear
yeah.
about it? Will you
Oh,
ever not hear
yeah.
about it?
They had that. Women in those societies had their way of enforcing cultural norms, and in a lot of ways, they had more power than men in terms of, like, this is a fact that most women won't admit to. Culturally, a lot of the times that men went to war was because of women. I'm don't want to go into that too much right now because I was going to make another point, but I just thought, yeah, it's a bit of a revelation, that one. I think that's quite funny. You can only get the image of men dominating women if you think women are submissive, stupid, and do nothing, which was not the case.
And as a
And they had a
man,
lot of power in their own way, but it
as a
was
man
different.
with a ex who, for whatever psychological reasons, I'm just going to stay out of that quagmire entirely, but
Mhm.
let's just leave it at physically and emotionally abusive. It's like, yeah, yeah, passive little wallflower? No.
No, she made her point known.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
by the way, my wife is off the charts of agreeable, which is really hard for me. Like you can imagine, because I'm really not that. Like I'm 99th percentile and she's 1st percentile, whatever, for agreeable, which is really hard. But we make it work. We're both training ourselves. Um, Even still, you know, and her point gets across.
Especially if you pay attention and care about it. It's like
hmm
you notice
Yeah,
something's wrong.
yeah.
What did I do?
I think the important note and the reason why feminists are always mad is that men had the final say,
Hmm.
but someone had to, right? Someone had to make the final decision on anything. Because if you have two people in a relationship and they both come to a final decision that's different, that's the end of the relationship.
There's
That's what that
also
is.
there's also a more socially touchy point, I think, that I've
Mm,
been looking at a lot of people, mainly women actually, who were, because I feel like women have more authoritative voices on women. um, saying that, oh, by their nature, and this is the people here talking about their own nature and extending
Hmm.
that as a general rule,
I know
but
where you're going.
yeah, they don't want to be the one making the final decision. It's like that's not saying they're not part of the decision making process, but shall we say, where do you want to eat tonight? Is a sort of stereotypical one. Or what do you want to eat
Hmm.
tonight? How many guys have struggled with the, well, where do you want to eat? I want to go where you want to go. Oh, I don't know. To take a stereotype as a example, and of course it's not a perfect stereotype, and so on. And yes, there are women who will flat out say, I want this, I'm going to go get this, I'm going to go for a career in politics and rule this country. Yes, it
Yeah,
happens. General rules do
they
not
don't
define all.
they don't do too well on the reproductive front though.
Mm. But the
But just a
point
statement
being,
about
yeah,
what is attractive is what succeeds evolutionarily, and thus what we are.
hmm,
They wouldn't be this way. But I get where you're driving at. And the uncomfortable thing in the modern situation is saying that by nature women are manipulative. Again, the joke. I didn't say that was a bad thing, but that word has such influence. Maybe might be a better word. Whatever works.
would the old way of saying it be womanly wiles?
No,
No, that's attraction,
no,
isn't
that's
it?
different.
A woman has her
While
ways. I'm just trying to think of how that would have been phrased in older ways. It's like when back in the 1900s or something.
I don't know.
It's like she'll get her way. It won't be by starting a big argument and demanding
It's
something.
it's
Hmm.
influence.
mm.
It's you think about the way that a queen would be playing games.
Mm.
They want the man to make the final decision, partly because they're attracted to men who make decisions, which means they want men to make the decisions. Sorry, nature again.
Knowing that those
But
men are doing
also,
so for their best, for the woman's best interest as well.
yes, this was one of the big
Hmm.
realizations when we decided to be traditional in our relationship in this way. Is that like, oh, I don't make the decisions for me.
Mm.
I make it for her. Because if I was making decisions for me, I probably wouldn't even have a family.
Mm.
It's not, it's very, very, very different things.
There was a.
Anyway, they,
Mm.
it's also responsibility, I think. There's a part of like, yeah, you make the decision because if it goes bad, it's on you.
Mm. And the men are
But if it
disposable.
goes well, yeah, yes. And if it goes well, it's on you too. But if not, I
Mm.
mean, we're the evolutionary gambit part of the species. We have the variation. And we need
Mm.
to be able to express that in order for the value of it to be extracted,
Mm.
which is where responsibility comes in. But on top of that, it's influence. She still wants her way somewhat. So she will influence the man's final decision,
Mm.
pushing it one way or another, but it won't be a hardline statement.
Well, yeah,
So for your dinner
there's.
example,
Mm.
it would be, oh, okay, well, why don't we go and get this? I don't know. I don't really feel like that. It's not a no. It's not an I want this. It's a maybe not that.
There was something about that I saw in a video. A guy with psychological training and happily married and so on, marriage counselor or marriage therapist, so
Mm,
for
I'd love to do that.
years, he was talking about how to interact with your wife so that it's a bonding experience, making in general and making decisions. And he was saying, go to your wife and say, here's a decision I've come to. What do you think? Rather than saying, what do you
Mm,
think we should do? It's he described the male and female brains as differing as the man will go, okay, here's 10 or more paths, way and compare, okay, this one. And then the female brain, he was saying, so take this as a proposal. We demand the right to be wrong, and I will take it. Um, that the female brain would take that one path and go out along it further than he could, and then say, "Oh, but then down the track, this and this and this and this will happen." And then he's like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
really? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, let's try the. Okay, what about this plan? Oh, that's good, but this will happen. Okay, I'll tweak it like this. There now? Yes. Okay, good. And then that's collaborative decision making. It's he goes
I
out and
I think
explores, and
yeah.
she assesses the one.
There's also something here that I think is it may be difficult for logical man mind to understand,
Hmm.
maybe even metaphysical. I don't understand, but there seems to be some form of wisdom that a woman has that's more like intuition.
Hmm.
I feel they're more in contact, or I have a sense that the balance in relationship between conscious and subconscious is different in men and women.
Hmm.
That we're very logical, processing, all in the mind, thinking. Whereas I've found with women, particularly with my wife, of course, I've had the most experience with her, that she won't think about things very much. She's not a super intellectual person, but every now and then it'll just be this gem out of nowhere of some kind of statement that is unbelievably wise. And she's like, oh yeah, that's just the first thing that came into my head. Not created on purpose. And it is very often the way that you're thinking that it's a longer sight, or you suggest something and coming up intuitively with here's what an issue with that might be.
Hmm.
I think advisor is the best role, or the natural role for a woman.
And the leader with no advisor runs into the cliff
Yeah,
and dies.
yeah, bad.
Yeah. And the advisor with no leader possibly struggles to move forward. Or in both cases, they make themselves into a bit of the other.
They
So
make bad decisions.
they can't be as good at either. But then if you get
Mm.
the specialization, then the two are greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, and you're half as good at both if you try and be both,
Mm.
which I think is, you know, partly why I'm concerned about your situation. But
Well, there's not much I can do about it.
I,
I'm
well,
working on what I can do about it.
okay, that's better. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm in a button-up shirt. I'm wearing my Oppa's watch. I'm in actual trousers with a belt instead of
nice.
track pants. I'm working
They
on
fit.
it.
Good shoes. I hope.
Slippers at the moment.
You tidied your beard yet?
Sorry?
Have you tidied your beard yet, or is it still very, very
It's got dry
fluffy?
washing on it, waiting to be put away.
Beard.
Oh, beard. Oh, sorry. I thought you said bed. Yes, it's shorter
No,
now.
I was not making a clean room joke. Oh, good. I hope
Yeah.
it's got a bit of sharpness to it.
I
That's
took
sort of what I was going for.
hairdresser's advice.
Okay, well, I'm sure that they know enough.
Yes, yes. I figured he would know what he was talking about.
So, my memory is very poor, which makes this show difficult. Where were we before I went on that massive tangent about um, advice,
Well,
decisions?
I've been wondering when to try and go off onto the other topic to finish off from last week of that white
Mm,
wall I found in my head.
wow, we do need to do that. I just feel like there was something that I was going to go at, and I got distracted by the feminist seeing women as submissive and stupid thing.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, I know. I was in the middle of making a point, and I made some side point, and then had the revelation of that, and I lost the original one.
Yeah, it's different,
Pendulum swinging, maybe.
yeah. Different does not equal worse. It's like you can say that different means one's better and one's worse. Okay, at what?
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, that
big thing that's missed these days.
That's a good statement. God. Yeah, I thought you valued diversity. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And yet so much of them, it's like the hate that the modern quote feminists at the sort of edge, the furthest edge of that, direct at femininity.
yeah,
There's
but both
yeah.
femininity and masculinity is a target, unless you're one pretending to be the other, which is where the conspiracy part of me comes in. It's like, that seems a little convenient for destroying a society.
It's almost like you must hate
I've lost
yourself.
it. I
You
remember that.
must hate the way you are.
You must hate everything that makes a society function. Where were we going with that? We were trying to elucidate the value of traditional, well, marriage effectively, stable society, a stable family being the center of a society.
Well, stable family, stable pair bonds, sexual relations.
Family, nuclear family.
Okay.
I think that's the smallest unit that can be stable.
Well, there is also a man on his own unit, which long term, of course, he dies and that's the end of it.
Uh,
But the sort of backwoodsman out comfortable on his own is also a functional unit, a semi independent
yeah,
functional unit.
I think yeah, the exceptions are not
Hmm.
helpful
Yeah. Exceptions
because
exist.
the foundation of the society is the standard set of behaviors and operations.
Hmm.
You can't base a society on everyone being different and being in their own situations. Everyone, if you're going to have a society that works, the majority of people need to do the same thing. And that's family for the majority of people.
Hmm. Some sort of
And
job and a
that
family
comes back to the
and friends and
society
yeah.
being an emergent property of human nature.
I don't know if I'd say
That
emergent because it's well, society emerges out of the interaction of many humans, but that's like saying a computer emerges out of the interaction of many parts. I feel like that's the
mm,
evolved intent rather than it just coming out of nowhere.
I'm
Hu-
I'm not sure I get your objection because
Emergent
we sort of laid
implies.
out. No, you go.
I might be reading this wrong or taking the wrong meaning from it, but emergent implies that it just comes out like a face in a cloud is emergent from the cloud. I really might be conceiving of that word wrong, but
I don't disagree.
rather than if emergent is just that it's the interaction of many parts
Mm,
rather than coming out of nowhere, then society is the interaction of many people, a cohesive
yes,
interaction.
based upon their nature.
Mm. And mediated by the shared world understanding that they all hold, which is the culture.
Yes. My point
Mm.
with emergent is that it's a bottom up phenomenon.
Mm.
It's something that is generated out of our nature and thousands of years of interactions.
Mm. It is not decided on and then imposed.
No,
That
no.
does not
And
work.
places where that has happened is false. And I would put a note to the anarchists that the structures that emerge up from the bottom also will regulate back down,
Mm.
but they are still emergent from the bottom.
And the ones that, once
And
they've
that's the
emerged up to the
original
top,
source.
sorry?
The original source of
Mm.
society is from the bottom, and while there is regulation coming down from the top, it lags behind that cultural generation from individuals.
Yes.
So it will always correct itself over time, just slower.
Mm.
Which is why I'm not super worried. I mean, I am, obviously. We're in a very dangerous precaution. Uh, well, very dangerous predicament. There we go. But unless malicious actors intervene or continue to intervene successfully, things will switch back. I think the pendulum's gone far enough that the correction back the other way might be, well, is well needed. I'll say
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of signs of that.
Mm,
Positive
it's
signs,
good.
like
Yeah.
want this type signs
Even
instead of
overcorrection in that way would be better than what we have.
mm,
And yes, it would probably be a bit restrictive, but restrictive is better than chaotic collapse and anarchy.
social instead of legal restrictive.
Um,
Although
I
social
don't
gets
know.
codified.
I don't know.
Mm.
This comes back all the way back to our comment about our discussion about sole parent benefit.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, if I was dictator of the nation, I would probably abolish that off the bat.
Yeah.
And that would be very painful for many people and it would be a rough time. But it sure as shit would steer the culture. And it wouldn't be good. But my point with that is law can change culture or culture will shift. Culture shifts to fit the environment and laws structure the environment of a nation.
Mm.
So you can force a culture to change by changing its laws, which is, I think, the danger we're in right now because a lot of really sacred and important laws in our countries have been abolished and changed completely. Going back
Mm.
even further to the men regulating each other issue, that was usurped by the state. Self defense isn't a thing that can be done anymore.
Or
Any form of
defense of
aggression to
others.
any other, or defense of others, any form of aggression
Mm.
to any other male or anyone is assault and criminal and always prosecuted because local police discretion has been removed. No longer can, sheriffs and deputies kind of set up, make their own choices in regards to enforcing the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law,
Mm.
which is bad. And then you have, the whole free speech issues, and then you have the changing of or the interchangeability of men and women in law, and then jumping back even further, the issues around divorce courts and settlements. Law
Mm.
has a massive effect, which is, I think, one of the reasons why it was targeted so heavily, that and education.
Mm.
You change the laws, you change the environment, and then humans adapt in culture. Note also the release of criminals from prisons and the shutting down of mental asylums. These law changes affect us greatly.
I'm gonna have to head off in about 20 minutes.
Ah, well, do we want to do a quick recap and touch on your dark reflection experience?
Yes, I'd like that.
Okay, let's
Can
try and jam it in as quickly as we
Yeah,
can.
nicely hidden at the end. Um,
Well, we did that with the last part of it.
yeah,
So.
true. Um, so yeah, last time you'd been talking about how the the idea of certain threats to our country, our way of life, and our families made your blood boil and made you were able to see how you could happily might be the wrong term, but willingly go to war against those threats, knowing that you could
I
die
think
and kill
I
for
think
it.
happily is the right word.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
The more we reference that episode, the more I'm like, Jesus Christ, we didn't fucking sense it from that.
It depends how far the AI
Mm.
listens. But anyway,
Yeah, oh, I think it listens to everything now.
that's true. Yeah. Anyway, so as you were describing that, I sort of hit a emotional wall, and I noticed it because we've been having discussions. We're noticing that sort of thing is productive, and it's like, there is a lack of thing happening here. And the imagery that I got was sort of standing with my nose against a white wall, and I felt like there was something on the other side of it. And so that night, how to describe this in ways that'll make sense. Um, I did preparations involving calling on, or preparations which included aspects of my own spirituality. So trying to lay this out in a way that would make sense to other people so that they could use it themselves, and just
Mm.
sort of asking for help in that sense. Like, I don't know what this will be. Can I have help? And I, I was sitting in a chair, just deep breathe and calm your body, focus inwards, and walked to meet the thing behind the wall. Just sort of imagine myself walking there, and your subconscious listens to imagery. It listens to symbolism. That's the language of the subconscious. That's what comes out in dreams a lot of the time. Hence psychoanalysis of dreams. And so if you communicate with it in that language, you can get very interesting results. And when I tried to approach that wall, I was getting a lot of extremely discordant imagery just sort of thrown on top, and almost kaleidoscopic effects, just obscuring stuff. And I think it's the equivalent of someone jumping up and down in front of you, yelling, saying, "Don't look at what's behind me! No, no, don't look, don't look, don't look, don't go there." Which was interesting, but I'd taken precautions, so I felt like I was comfortable to at least see what was there. And I told myself, I'm going to sit here until you stop this and let me see it. And eventually, when it settled down a bit, and I got settled down a bit, it didn't go away entirely. But I got to meet what was on the other side of the wall, and it took the form of whatever I would perceive as monstrous, and kept switching forms. Like, oh, here's this monster from an anime I saw relatively recently. Oh, here's that monster from Star Wars. Da, 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 da. Lots of things with big teeth and claws and that sort of thing. And it tried attacking me and just sort of broke its claws on me and bounced off me as I was just standing there. It's like, oh, well, you can't seem to do anything to me. And think what I felt and what I understood after thinking about it for a while was that behind that wall was the potential for destructive, incoherent rage. And what I think happened was that I'd locked that away as a reaction to feeling the anger of adults as a child in general, right? So lots of little instances, and being sort of conscientious and agreeable and um, empathetic, I'd felt that deeply when it happened, and so I'd mentally marked it down as, well, no,
I have a question though.
yep.
I don't know if you know the answer. When you were a young child,
Hmm.
were you allowed to have tantrums? When things didn't go your way, you got angry as all children do, and you kicked and hit and did all sorts of things. Do you think that that was allowed, or do you think that was,
I
I don't
don't
want to use the word
know
punished,
enough
but
to say that. I
mm,
feel like No, I don't remember there being tantrums in the house growing up from me or
Hmm.
my brother,
Uh,
so it would
I
be
wonder if
consistent
that
with that.
was, yeah, I wonder if that was suppressed
Possibly.
completely at that
Mm.
age. And then I wonder also, in my mind, your subconscious also took that on as part of its personality and thus was trying to distract you from going near it.
Mm. Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
So yeah, it felt like more that that was the space where that happened rather than the thing in it was something that was constrained. So it was a don't go here rather than keep this here. But
Mm.
those sort of definitions are mutable in the subconscious and representation. Um, and it was just that the thing there was the sort of personality of the space. And when I sort of went back to look at it the next day, the form it had taken on was a version of me as an aspect of myself, shackled with the white wall had sort of dissolved into uh, hard white light, if that makes sense. Not like clear. It was transparent, but you could see that it was there, almost ghostly in a sense, but very solid and present. One around its neck and just sort of holding its sort of arms out. And I say it because I've met other personality aspects before, like what I've come to term the warrior aspect, and I talked about them as him. But this one wasn't it. It wasn't. It didn't have reason, and I
Animal.
yeah, yeah. I focused on the power that was restraining it rather than it itself because it's like that's so okay. Even when I met you here, the rest of my subconscious shackled you. I think I'm not going to try and undo those shackles, but I'm going to try and understand them. And it felt like a lot of my, or at least a portion of my willpower had been locked up in locking that potential up. And the warrior aspect, okay, this is symbolism, this is mind, this is almost conscious dream state. So, yeah, logic gets
It's all right.
flexible. But the warrior aspect, who had got a lot cleaner and a lot more sort of well groomed since I'd acknowledged him, he was now sort of dressed in animal skins and sort of combed hair, clean, and so on. He came to look at this bit too and just sort of sat there in front of it. And at first I thought, okay, you're guarding it, you're keeping it there. But then after a while, I had the idea of okay, it's a weapon. It's not a aspect, it's a tool. And so I managed to sort of as a tool, as a weapon, okay, can it be a sword? Or whether the idea came from, was my idea or came from somewhere else or inside. Yeah, that was the idea. And so since then I formed the shackles into a hilt and sheath and just sort of imagine it, express my will, and it worked well. And then the violence became a sword. And when I imagine myself with the sword, it's like not much happens. But when the warrior aspect ended up having the sword on his belt, like when I gave it to him, it's like yes, that's where it's meant to be. And like he keeps the sword there partly so that the sword doesn't escape, so that the danger it poses doesn't get out, and partly so it's like it's here if I need it. And when he draws it a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, there's some danger, and I don't know how to bring it forth in a good way yet. But the aspect of myself that would work in that area has it. And
You can feel the power from it.
yeah, I'm not well acquainted with it, but it's like it makes me think of having claws and the when it was in a human like aspect, as in a me like aspect, it was dripping blood and covered in grievous wounds and probably some bones sticking out and just sitting there grinning, and it's like, yeah, you're nasty. But also like it's the aspect that says injuries are irrelevant. I destroy you at whatever it's looking at. It's like the warrior aspect. It was, I got the image of you get punched down, you spit out the blood, you stand back up and carry on the fight. This was rabid wild animal, I rip you to shreds type potential. Although I don't have a strong inclination that way anyway, so it's not as strong as I suspect it is in you. But now,
Well,
when I think of the sword, it burns, like with sort of slow, hungry, deep, not quite blood red
mm.
flames, but sort of black orange flames. And it's like there's a an intent or a desire to consume associated with it, but it's sort of sealed away. And it's like, okay, you stay sealed there, sealed in a sheath. So it's not awareness of
You,
it, I think, like in terms of Escape of the Shadow, I think it did leak out at times when I was frustrated with my son, in the sense of I was tired, he was wanting to wrestle. I pushed him back onto the bed, and I'd end up pushing onto him as he was trying to climb on me as a jungle gym. It's like, get off, shove. And he fell on the bed, and you shoved my nose. I'm sorry. And so awareness of that aspect, I think, is helpful there for me to paradoxically be more peaceful when I need to be.
it's integration.
Mm,
This is the bringing the shadow under your control.
mm.
I
But
like the sword metaphor. I think perhaps this is simply your experience, but you've done very well to be able to engage in this symbolism and manipulate it in a way that you can improve your psyche. I mean, imagine this kind of thing for someone who is in your situation, but without your experience, would take a very long time in psychotherapy to develop.
mm.
And you did it on your own in like an hour.
I've had practice understanding sort of theories of how the mind works from a few sources. So it was, I understood to a degree the space I was working within, and just
Did you
lots of
say that you
background
find
points.
it? How do you feel in your imagery of holding the sword?
Let me try out. So I'll inhabit the warrior aspect and see what that feels like. One of the things that I remember coming out a lot as I was sort of being aware of this aspect and sort of understanding it was heat, like getting hot in my
Mm,
belly, and getting that at the moment too. Like it's relatively cool, but my torso's getting a bit hot and sweaty because of the sort of, not sure. The fire analogy is a good one, but
mm.
the
I don't know how to
sense,
describe it either.
yeah, the sense I get through the warrior aspect is the phrasing that comes to mind is "I'm dangerous," as the referring to the hole with the sword. It's like I really don't want to cut you, but don't try me.
Mm, I think this is a good step forward.
I suspect I've been influenced in, primed might be the right term, in this direction from your discussions and expressions from your own experience.
I guess so. And you have the relevant psychological knowledge as well, which helps this a lot, I can imagine.
Hmm.
You understand what the shadow is, you understand integration. you understand the council of me type of thinking.
Hmm.
Hmm. It's remarkable in my mind how quickly this has happened with you. That once you've given it your attention, how fast you've been able to improve. Like we've been having these conversations for, I don't know, a couple months, maybe. Even some of the off-air ones that we've done around, early stuff when we were talking about the relationships and things before we really began recording. It's very fast development. I'll just give you some props for that.
I feel like the phrase unified will comes to mind. Like, my will is not unified to any extent, but if you're 50-50 for and against something, you're not going to go either direction. I'm probably 75-25 in the direction of I want to find problems and solve them. And that actually, that find problem and solve it attitude has been a big thing in my life. So that the sort of if I'm doing something and you notice a problem, I want you to point it out because I don't want to have the problem. I don't want to be the problem or make a
Mm.
mistake. So that pattern of um
I think it's a very male thing.
mm, yeah.
I was sort of talking with my wife about this today. She thinks that she's pregnant with a boy. So she's sort of talking about all the ways she feels different from normal because she's never had this before. And I made that point, and she was like, "Really? Oh no," because she's been having that feeling as well.
Mm,
And I think there is something very male about that. That's an issue. I'm going to change it because I don't like it.
mm. I don't like having an issue. And I've deliberately
Yeah, it's an issue for me,
mm,
and I want to change it because I don't like that.
yeah.
And that's very changing the world in my way, kind of dominating aspect.
And there's also identifying myself with not with the opinions I have or beliefs I hold or way I do things, but aiming to, and not successfully, but aiming to identify myself with the thing that changes, the thing that grows, the phoenix that rises from the ashes and burns, the
Mm.
continued growth and movement. So I am not what I do now. I am the motion of moving forward through that. And
It's very difficult to maintain a solid identity with that. Like I agree.
yes,
I think that's
yes,
the way to be. But I don't know if it's because I'm a very open person, um, in personality sense, but I find it really hard to maintain any form of identity.
yeah. I've always had
And I
trouble
also
because,
associate with that as well.
yeah,
I think spirituality is the only answer there
yeah,
to maintaining
yeah.
stability.
There is a me looking out. And that's what I am. I am not the clothes I wear. I'm not the opinions I hold. I've had trouble holding strong opinions because if I see an argument against a strong opinion, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. And I know it makes sense. I think the balance of evidence is this way, and that's why I think it, but I see the merits of the opposition, and I've never
Mm,
been able to not see it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I think this is why, yeah, spirituality holds such sway. The idea of like, I am eternal soul, I am a being of light, and I
Mm,
am not limited by this existence.
mm,
Makes it a much more easy to go, well, I'm not my personality, because that
yes.
changes. I'm not my ideas, that changes.
I think you have
I'm
a,
more.
I think we do have a character that is beneath the personality that
Mm.
within the metaphysical structure of reincarnation, that's what would carry on between lives, and that's what would grow and develop, and where
Yeah,
some innate
maybe.
characteristics come from. But that is very much a maybe. That is a here's a hypothesis. The
Yeah,
weight
I'm a
of what,
very,
yeah,
when it comes to the metaphysical stuff, for me, I'm a very I don't know what I am when I'm not here, but I know it's more than I am when I'm here.
But by being
And that's
here,
about as much as I'm willing to
mm,
believe.
by being here, does that become more? Because uh, when this time
Mm,
is done, the you that came
no.
into this will be more than the you that leaves.
I don't. I have a hesitation with that
Hmm.
because I believe that I am greater than I am while I'm here. Like I am a small part of a bigger version of me that is grander.
Hmm.
And perhaps I am developing the grander part in a small way while I'm here, inhabiting 1% of 1% of me
Well,
and then crafting that.
there's
But
the idea of the, you could say, super consciousness, the higher
yeah.
self. Like your subconsciousness is below your normal level of consciousness, but still
Mm,
exists. And the superconsciousness, by this metaphor or structure, would be above this level of self and be able to look at the self you are now and say, okay, yeah, you're screwing this up. You need to learn this lesson. How
yeah,
about
I don't
this
know the dynamic
experience?
there.
Hmm.
I don't know the dynamic there. But I will say that I do believe that, and I have personally had an experience with that.
Hmm.
It's the reason I have a hesitation with the development idea is that grander me, the higher self, is so grand that I feel I could never have an influence on it.
Hmm.
Um, it's this is quite a funny thing to say. It is the most humbling thing ever, but it's also the most arrogant thing ever because it's also me.
I wonder if
The
the
only thing that humbles me is comparing myself to me. Uh,
in this
sorry, making the joke out of it on purpose.
but I'm just thinking about the almost universal, as in culturally universal, not universal as in every single person has it, but the experience of all being one, like the universe is one, we are the world and God is us type experience.
Mm,
The higher aspects that we're talking about of ourselves being the steps or being on the chain between us and the ultimate divine whatever, and we are growing, and in a real sense that is us, but it's also not the we that we normally work with, not the us that we normally work with or self.
mm,
This is getting very
yeah.
blurry and very sort of
Uh, the image in my
speculative.
mind is the Mandela. Is it the Mandela? Is that the right word? I don't, maybe it's not the
Pattern
right word.
patterns.
Image in my mind
Mm.
is the image of the Buddhas sitting on the Buddhas.
Ah.
And then it's
Mm.
like a big collage all the way up. And then sets of Buddhas make bigger Buddhas. And then
Mm.
they make one big Buddha as the big Buddha.
Mm.
If I'm a part of a greater self, then the greater self could be part of an even greater one.
But then
Ad infinitum.
are we both part of that same
Yeah,
greater self?
that's always my that's always my gambit whenever I meet people who believe in reincarnation is I ask them a series of like 6 questions. And at the end of 6 questions that they all answer yes to, I go like, well then aren't we all one big one God playing roles as different people over time? And they sort of either make a laugh at that or get grumpy. Um,
If I recall correctly, I gave unusual answers to those six questions.
yeah, because you asterisk everything. You're not willing. Yeah. See, you find that hilarious. That's like, yes, that's me. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, no, definitive statements on everything.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Like
like,
your statements earlier of like, oh, not all women, but some.
yeah,
And I'm here, going, nope, I'm going to make the generalization. All women, yes.
yep. And I'm like, yes and no to every question.
And I'm like, yeah, yeah.
So, I'm not
Whereas
wrong,
in
but
my head, I believe I know it's a yes and no, but I'm not going to say that because I'm not bothering with other people's offended ideals. How I was made for this time, almost like I chose it.
uh,
Weird.
anyway,
Anyway, I think you need to head off to a special dinner, don't you?
yes, workmates meeting for dinner and board games.
Sounds fun.
Yes, it
Have you
does.
brought your son to one of those yet?
I haven't been to one of those yet.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe a bit of a stretch.
Yes, but he came with me to the
Backstory, that's advice that I gave to that one.
he came with me to the work barbecue Wednesday or two ago.
Ah, good.
Yes, and he was running around and
The
asking
reference
questions and yeah.
the reference for the listeners to that one is met in person, spoke to his son. His son has not yet got the concept of adults say adult things and they're more valuable than child things. I was making the point earlier to my wife today that that was one of the most valuable realizations I had as a kid, which was if I shut up about the child thing I want to say and listen to the adult things that are being said, I can join in on the adult conversation. And if I do so, I will be welcomed by the adults. But if I say the child thing, the adults will frown at me and not want to interact with me.
Yeah. So the boiler was being run that night,
That's
but after the
that's the
barbecue, and he was running around and interacting with all the other adults there, and most of the time I wasn't on his case, so he was acting independently among the adults. So yeah, positive steps.
it's positive steps, yeah.
Yes.
More exposure. That's always my answer to people who get grumpy at me for homeschooling thing. Which is like, oh, kids need to be socialized. And my answer is, yeah, by adults. That's how that needs to happen. Anyway, I shall let
Yes.
you go, and my dinner's getting cold on the table, so I shall go and eat that. My
Yes.
lovely family waiting for me.
Well, good conversation. Yeah, more demons to face in the future. Enjoy your dinner.
Ah, isn't there always? Yeah, that's a good statement for
Yeah,
humanity.
let's go beat them.
More demons tomorrow. I'm gonna go eat something.
Yeah, turn the demons into your sword.
And then make some food with it.
Oh, that's a nice image. Here, demon sword. I chop the bread with you. Oh, nicely toasted. Thank you.
Nothing tastes better than roasted dragon.
Oh, that's got layers to it.
And I found some golden women too. So things are going well.
Golden woman.
Oh well, gold and women. All right.
Both work. See
Yeah,
ya.
I mean, statues of golden women are cool, but Anyway, good night.